I think I start off like all of these videos by saying something like, oh, I haven't gone out taking photos in forever. And it always ends up being true, because I never get out enough to actually go take photos. Garrett,
How you
you good?
It's been a while.
Yeah, I think last winter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Awesome. So the plan is to do this cloning effect, have one person clone 3 times in a picture. I did this before, like last year. I should throw up like my example on screen, but this time with like different outfits. So we'll see how that goes. Did you want to do this like vertical picture or like horizontal picture?
What do you think would fit like for an Instagram picture? Do you think
Definitely vertical.
vertical? All right,
Yeah.
okay.
So this effect isn't too hard to pull off. You don't even really need a fancy camera. You could use your phone. But what you want to make sure is that your settings are locked. So I have all my settings locked, my ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and then white balance you can leave on auto because you can change that in post. And then since I'm on a tripod, I also turned off stabilization inside. But the main thing is, if you're using a phone, make sure that the exposure is the same. So you don't want to get any brighter or darker in between scenes, and it has to be on a tripod, because if your photo starts moving around, you won't be able to stack them up in post. So really, as long as you have a camera on a tripod, you can pull this off. It's not too hard. I'm using a wide angle lens, so I don't get as much depth of field on here, and I can just get more in focus to work with later. I really hope that the sky doesn't change, because that'll mess with my exposure. I can always try to match it later in post, but easiest if you can get everything right in camera for this type of stuff. Are you walking for this one, or are you just standing?
Oh yeah. I'm just looking at the picture so I can see what
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
positioned himself.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, go. All right, should be good. What do you think about like stacking up on the stairs?
That could be for that could actually be a one instead of doing one on a table. You could do one on the stairs actually.
Yeah, that could work. Just have one like each side, kind of going down.
But for a funny one, so is there any way like you can go on the ground and then like get like an angle like you're looking above us?
Yeah, I got that. All right, so this one is looking pretty good. We have like this water fountain, waterfall type of thing, and we want to get Garrett centered up in the middle. But while he's changing we don't want to lose a spot. So what I've done is right here, I marked it for like a little piece of grass. So when he comes back, you can get perfect alignment for the next 2 shots. So we already got the one for the left side. Nice, all right. Yeah, this one should be easy to line up. 'Cause middle and then left side.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
And then just like zoomed in and everything.
Yeah, I could zoom in afterwards.
2 more.
One more.
Okay.
All right. So, the photo part of this video is all done. For the most part, it went pretty smoothly. We set up the tripod and we got all the shots. We only had to go back like once or twice to try and get pickup shots, but you can line it up with the camera pretty well. Definitely not exact though. At one point, the sun did come out and it definitely changed the exposure and the lighting for the scene, so I'll have to see how that one turns out. But for the most part, the photo taking part isn't that challenging, and the rest of it just comes down to editing, which is what we're gonna do right now. Okay, so now comes the editing part of the tutorial. For me, I'm gonna be using Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, but of course, you can use any editing programs of your choice. Now in Lightroom, my only goal is to organize the photos and find the ones I wanna match up. Right now, I'm not trying to apply any coloring presets. All I wanna do is check this one box to remove some of that vignette from the camera, but other than that, I just want to keep the photos as they are. So for the most part, all these photos have the same exposure. I locked off the exposure on the camera as I planned to. However, we came back for this last shot later and we reset up the camera so I didn't have the exposure exactly the same. So what I want to do What I want to do is set up a reference photo. That way I can try and match the exact exposure. That way when I stack them, we don't have one that's brighter or darker. There. I pulled up the exposure a little bit, and I think that's pretty good. So now all I want to do is pick a base photo that I can start editing with in Photoshop. I like this one right here. This one would have been good, but it's a little bit blurry. So I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to right click, edit in, and then Photoshop. So we have the first picture open in Photoshop. Now we want to open up the other two by right clicking on them. I'm going to pick this one, edit in, and then open as a smart object in Photoshop. Now we have all three pictures open. I can just drag one on top of the other, like that. And I press Ctrl T to transform and then stack them. So now I have all three pictures together in Photoshop in the same file. You can see the last one, it's slightly moved when I unhit it. That's because we had to reset up the camera. So what I'm going to do is, for this last picture, I'm going to turn the opacity down, and I'm just going to try to line it up. That way it's as close as possible to the other photos. All right, now that's pretty good. So we have all three photos here. So now we want to add these layers on top. That way we can combine Garrett's different poses into one picture. So to do that, I'm going to unhide one of the ones on top. I'm going to click the layer mask button, and I'm going to hit Control I to invert the layer mask, make it all black. And what I can do is I can paint Garrett back in. So with the brush tool, I set it to white. I can just paint him back in like that. And it lines up pretty well right there. Now, if I wasn't clicking it back and forth, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. And that's pretty good. So the reason I'm using a layer mask and not just using the eraser to like cut out parts around him is that if I mess up, and let's say, I don't know, get some of his shirt, I can always just bring that back with a layer mask, just like that. Now I can do the same thing with this photo. I can invert it, and then I can start painting this back right here. Now the thing with this one is it overlaps with one of the older photos. So what I can do with the brush is I can paint it out. That way I can have him behind himself. So there, I've got most of the hand and body cut out pretty well. For the most part, you couldn't really tell. I can just barely see there's this little glow around his hat. That's because the sky changed while we were doing the photo. So I'm just gonna go back and clean that up just to try and make it least noticeable as possible. So there we go. I think that's stacked pretty nicely. Now I want to go back into Lightroom. That way I can do some color adjustments. So all I have to do is hit save. So now with everything back in Lightroom, I can do my color corrections, I can do my cropping, and everything's fine. So for the other photos, I can do the same process of opening them, editing them in Photoshop, and then finishing them back in Lightroom. Now if I see something I don't like, let's say I pull up the shadows and you see the hat looks a little messed up, shirt looks a little messed up, what I can do is I can go back into Photoshop and I can mess around with the clipping mask until I have it exactly how I want it. So I can change this right here. And then if I just press Control S for save, if I go back into Lightroom, it'll have those adjustments made to it. Alright, so now that I'm happy with all my changes in Photoshop, I'm back in Lightroom and I can start, cropping the photo, get my Instagram crop ready. I can start putting on some presets and messing with the color. The presets I'm using in this video are my own. I've been working on them since 2019, so if you're interested, I'll have them linked down in the description. So that sums up the editing process for these duplication types of photos. I can go speed up the rest of the process for the other photos, and I'll show you how they turned out at the end. Okay, one thing to bring up, since there are more than, just a couple layers, I'm gonna move around the layering because we have more in the front like these. It would be a lot easier to cut them out and stack them on front than to go back and try to like cut them out if these layers were on top. So yeah, that's another important thing. Yeah, I'm just trying to go in order from like back to front. So the back is in the lowest, and as you go, you just keep stacking them. Another thing to keep in mind is the shadows. So I'm also painting in a lot more of the shadows on this railing, just to have it look a lot more realistic. Camera didn't move, so it should be easy to blend them. But the exposure changed for this one a lot. So this one's super dark, bright, and somewhere in the middle. Everything about this picture changed. Okay, so what I think this means for me is that I need to try and match the exposure in Lightroom, and then I'll bring them into Photoshop to try and get them close. Use this as a reference. I like how bright and nice it looks. So we're gonna try to get it as close as possible to that. So we need it definitely brighter. The sun came out, so it's warmer. Obviously, it will not be perfect. I just need it good enough so when I try and blend them, it doesn't stick out as badly as it did before. So that's not too bad. Again, I gotta try to warm this one up a little bit. Yeah, I think this could definitely work. This could work a lot better. All right, let's try this one. Edit, Photoshop. That actually looks so cool. I'm really glad the sun actually did end up coming out because it looks way better than when it was cloudy. All right, so this is the last set of photos down at the park bench. Again, we had to like move it again at the end, so we'll see if I can reline that up. Other than that, should be an easy stack. So there you have it. That's how I do this type of photo duplication, photography, and editing. If you want to try this yourself, I encourage you to do so. It doesn't really take a lot as long as you know what you're doing. So thank you all for watching and making it to the end. I'll see you all in the next one.